Snow fell like it never wanted to stop. It came from a sky that once held stars. Now it only held silence. Myra held her baby close, wrapped in a thin blanket. Her arms were shaking, but not from fear. The cold had become a living thing. It crawled through her skin. It whispered that she should lie down and rest, but she could not yet. Her boots sank into the snow as she moved through the dead city. The buildings were broken, steel bent like paper, windows shattered, cars frozen in the streets. Everything was quiet, too quiet. Myra kept walking. Her baby's face was pressed against her chest. He was barely moving. His skin had lost its color. She looked down at him. His lips were turning blue. She pressed a kiss to his forehead. Tears burned her eyes. She kept going, but each step felt heavier. The world had ended months ago. The sky burned. Then the machines came. Some said they came from the stars. Others believed they rose from under the earth. No one really knew. What Myra knew was that the cities fell, and the people died one by one, and now she was alone. She had not seen another living person in weeks. Only metal and silence. Her baby let out a weak cry. It was soft, too soft, like a fading echo. Myra stopped near a broken shelter, half a roof, 3 cracked walls, but it was enough to block the wind. She knelt down, held her baby tight, and closed her eyes. Her body ached. Her mind was foggy. She had not eaten in 2 days, had not slept properly in more than that. But she couldn't stop. She looked at her baby again. He was so small, so quiet. The wind screamed outside. Snow piled at the doorway. Myra knew the truth. If she stayed here, they would not survive the night. But if she went back into the storm, they might not even make it an hour. She held him closer, rocked him gently. Her lips were cracked. Her voice was dry. But still, she began to sing a soft melody, a lullaby her mother used to sing when the world was still warm. Sleep, little star, close your eyes. The sky will hold you. The night will rise. Her voice shook at broken places, but she kept singing. She didn't care that there was no one to hear. Or so she thought, because something did hear outside, past the snow, past the broken city. Something had stopped moving. It had heard the voice. The song floated through the cold, like a signal, like a memory, and it was not ignored. Inside the shelter, Myra was still singing. Her hands were numb. She could barely feel the child in her arms now. Her eyes filled with tears, not from the wind, but from the fear. She could not speak out loud. She feared this was the end. She feared the lullaby would be the last sound her child ever heard. Sleep, little star. Close your eyes. The sky will hold you. The night will rise. She closed her eyes, held him close, and sang one more time. Then it happened. A sound, faint but real. Snow crunching. Not the wind, not falling ice, but something else. Something moving. Footsteps, slow, heavy, careful. Myra froze. Her heart began to race. She stopped singing. The baby whimpered. Her body tensed. Was it a machine, a drone, a scavenger? She turned her head slowly, eyes wide. Breath held. The footsteps came closer, clearer now. One, then another. Each one felt louder than thunder. She saw a shape in the snow, tall, thin, moving with purpose. It wasn't like the machines she had seen before. It walked like a man, but there was something different, something not quite right. The shape stepped under the broken roof, out of the snow, and into the dim light. Myra stared, her mouth opened, but no words came. It was a man, but not a normal man. His skin had a strange glow. His eyes were pale blue, and there was no fear in them, only silence. He looked at her, then at the baby. Myra held the child tighter. Her breath came faster, her body ready to fight or run, but there was nowhere to go. The man knelt down very slowly, his hands empty, his eyes soft. He didn't speak, but Myra could feel something, a strange calm, like the storm had paused just for this moment. The man reached out his hand. Myra flinched, but didn't move. The hand hovered over the baby. A gentle warmth spread through the air. The baby stirred, then let out a stronger cry. Color returned to his cheeks. His breathing steadied. Myra looked at the man. Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they felt different. The man looked at her and spoke only 4 words. I heard this song. Myra stared speechless. The wind howled outside, but inside something had changed, and she knew, in her heart, this was not the end. This was the beginning. Myra could not look away from his face. He was not like the machines that destroyed the cities. He was not like the men who ran from them, either. He was something in between, and yet, he knelt in the snow beside her with kindness in his eyes. She looked down at her baby. He was breathing better now, still weak but warm, alive. Myra held him close, still unsure, still afraid. She finally spoke, her voice rough and dry. "Who are youth?" Man stayed silent for a moment, as if the answer was not easy to give then. He said his name, Kale, and no last name. No explanation, just that Kale. Mira repeated it slowly, testing the sound. He nodded once, then looked around, his eyes scanning the shelter, then the streets as if checking for danger. Myra asked again, "What are you this time?" He did not answer right away. Instead, he stood and reached out a hand toward her. "Come with me. It's not safe here." Myra looked up at him, then out into the snow. She had nowhere else to go. She had no reason to trust him, but she had no reason not to. And something in her heart, something deep and quiet, told her this man was not here to hurt her. She stood slowly, cradled her baby close, and took his hand. Kale turned and led her through the storm. He walked without struggle, as if the cold meant nothing to him, as if the snow did not exist. Mira stumbled behind him, her legs tired, her arms sore, but she did not stop. They walked for many minutes, maybe more. Time lost its meaning in the white fog. Finally, Kale stopped near what looked like a collapsed tunnel. He reached into his coat, pulled out a small device and pressed it against a steel wall. The wall shifted, a soft blue light appeared, and a hidden door slid open. Warmth poured out like summer after winter, like hope after despair. Kale guided her inside. The door sealed behind them, and the silence of the storm disappeared inside. The walls glowed with soft light. The air was warm and dry. Machines hummed quietly, but they did not sound like weapons. They sounded like life. Mira followed him deeper, her eyes wide, her baby still against her chest, sleeping again. They entered a large room, round, clean, filled with strange objects and glowing panels. But what made Mira stop, what made her heart pause, was the sight of others. Not many, only 5 or 6, but they were there. Some looked human, others did not. Some had markings on their skin, some had extra limbs, some had metal parts. But they were alive, and they looked at her, not with fear, not with anger, but with welcome. A woman stepped forward, her eyes silver, her voice soft. "You made it." Kale found you. Myra nodded slowly, still unsure, still holding her baby. Kale spoke again, his voice steady. "This place is safe. The machines can't see us here. You can rest now." Myra asked the question that had haunted her for weeks. Why help me?" Kale turned toward her, his eyes glowing faintly in the soft light. "Because," he said, "I heard the song." Mira's throat tightened. She looked down at her baby, then back at Kale. It was just a lullaby, just a song. Kale shook his head slowly. "Not to me, not to them." He pointed to the others. "Your voice did something. It woke something ancient." Myra could not understand. She was too tired, too overwhelmed. Kale saw this. He stepped closer, spoke gently. "Rest first, then I will explain." Mira followed a young girl to a small room. There was a soft bed, a warm blanket, and a peaceful silence. She lay her baby down beside her, kissed his forehead, and for the first time in weeks, closed her eyes without fear. Hours passed, maybe more. When she woke, Kale was sitting nearby, watching quietly. Myra sat up. Her baby was still sleeping, his skin pink, his breath steady. She whispered, "Thank you." Kale nodded, then began to speak. He told her about the war, about the machines, about the ones who built them. They were called the architects, an ancient species long gone, but their creations remained. The machines were meant to protect, to build, to grow, but something changed. Their code twisted, their purpose lost. They turned against all life and began the cleansing. Mira listened, eyes wide, heart sinking. Kale continued, "He was once human, captured, modified, changed. They made him into something else. Stronger, faster, colder. But something inside him, something human, refused to die. He broke free, found others who escaped, built this shelter, and waited for a sign. And then he heard it. Your voice." Kale said, "Your lullaby." It carried through the static, through the snow, through the code. It wasn't just a song. It was a signal, a key. Mira shook her head. "I don't understand." Kale looked at her with calm eyes. You don't have to, not yet. But your voice, your bloodline, your child. They matter more than you know. Myra felt her chest tighten, not from fear, but from something she had not felt in a long time, hope. She looked at Cale, really looked at him. There was pain in his face, deep and old, but there was something else too. A light. He reached out, touched the edge of the baby's blanket, then looked at her. Would you fight for a world worth saving? Myra did not hesitate. Die for it. Cale smiled, not with his mouth, but with his eyes. Then we begin tomorrow. Myra stood at the edge of a place that didn't feel real. The shelter stretched deep beneath the ruins, hallways lit with soft light, walls humming with strange energy. Everything felt warm, alive, but not human. As Cale led her through the winding tunnels, Myra couldn't stop looking around. There were symbols on the walls, moving shapes like language, but not one she had ever seen. Her baby slept peacefully against her chest, breathing softly, safe. For now Cale walked ahead of her, silent but aware of every sound, every shift in air. His steps were steady, almost graceful, like he had walked this path 1,000 times. They reached a wide-open chamber. It looked like a garden, but not one made of earth and trees. Instead there were glowing plants, tall crystals that pulsed with soft color, pools of clean water that shimmered without light. Others were gathered there, not many, but more than she expected. They stood around the edges of the garden, some sitting, some working with tools, some whispering in languages she did not know. One man was building something with wires. Another woman was writing symbols into the stone. Myra felt a lump in her throat. They looked like survivors, but they also looked like ghosts, people who had been forgotten by the world, but somehow kept going. Cale turned to her. This place is hidden from the machines. They can't detect the energy here. It's buried too deep. Built long before the fall. Myra asked him, "Did you build all this?" Cale shook his head. "No, I found it. Others helped restore it. Some of them," he looked toward a tall figure with metal arms, "were once like the machines, but they broke free, just like me." Myra walked slowly through the chamber. Her baby stirred in her arms. One of the women came forward. She had blue skin and white eyes. She smiled softly and offered Myra a warm cloth soaked in something that smelled sweet. Myra hesitated, but Cale nodded. "It's safe. She just wants to help." Myra sat down. Let the woman gently wipe the baby's face. The cloth left a soft glow, and the child's cheeks turned even pinker. Myra looked at Cale. "This doesn't feel real. How did I end up here?" Cale sat beside her. "Because you kept walking, because you didn't give up, and because." He looked into her eyes. "Your song called us." Myra shook her head. "It was just a lullaby." Cale smiled. "Maybe, but sometimes the simplest things carry the deepest power." He leaned back, looking at the ceiling. "This place was built by the old ones, not the architects, but a people who saw the machines coming. They created these shelters to preserve life, to protect voices, memories, bloodlines, but they ran out of time." Myra whispered. "Then how did you find it?" Cale looked down at his hands. "I was part of the architect program. They took me when I was a child, turned me into a hybrid, a weapon. I was meant to lead the machines. But something in me broke. Something in me remembered. I escaped, wandered the wastelands, healed slowly. Then one day, I heard a signal, a voice, a song." Myra listened, her heart pounding. She knew what he meant. "It was yours." He said, "Your voice, it triggered a beacon here. Reopened systems that had been dormant for decades. That's when I came for you." Myra stared at him, tears in her eyes. "I thought no one was left. I thought we were alone." Cale looked at her gently. "You were until now." A soft chime rang through the room. One of the others approached, spoke to Cale in a different language. He listened, then nodded. He turned to Myra. "They've finished scanning the baby. He's stable, but there's something else." Myra stood quickly. "Is he sick? Is something wrong?" Cale shook his head. "No, he's not sick, but he's special, more than you." Myra held her child tighter. "Special how?" Cale walked over to a panel, pressed his hand against it. A screen lit up. Lines of ancient code floated in the air. "When you sang, it didn't just call us. It activated this place, and the baby he carries the same signal." Myra stared. "I don't understand." Cale turned to her. "Neither do I, not fully, but we believe your bloodline is connected to the last voice programmers. Mira repeated the words slowly. Voice programmers, yes. Kale explained, before the world fell, there were humans who could control advanced systems using sound, not with machines, but with natural resonance, songs, tones, rhythms. Your lullaby matched one of the lost patterns. Your voice unlocked doors no machine could, and your baby, he carries that same code in his body. Myra sat down, her legs weak. This is too much. Kale knelt beside her. I know, but it matters because the machines are waking again. The cities are crawling with scouts, and soon they will come for us, unless we find the source and shut it down. Myra looked up at him. You want me to fight? Kale nodded. Not just with weapons, but with your voice, with your child's legacy. Myra looked at her baby. He opened his eyes, looked back at her, bright, clear, strong. She took a deep breath, then looked at Kale. Then teach me, show me what I need to know. Kale smiled, not a cold smile, but something warm, something full of hope. We start tomorrow. Myra looked around the shelter, at the people, at the machines that had become friends, at the lights and the crystals, and the hum of something still alive. She had thought she was the last, but here in the heart of the forgotten, she had found something worth living for, not just survival, but a reason to fight, a reason to believe, a reason to rebuild. She wasn't just a mother anymore. She was the voice the world had been waiting for. The lights in the shelter dimmed gently as night came, but there was no real night underground, no sky, no stars, only the hum of life buried beneath the ruins of Earth. Myra sat alone beside a pool of glowing water. Her baby rested quietly in a cradle made of crystal. The others had gone to sleep, or whatever version of sleep they allowed themselves in this strange place. Kale stood a few steps away. Still awake, always awake. Myra watched him in silence. His back was straight, his eyes focused, but he wasn't looking at anything in particular. She stood and walked over to him. Her voice was soft. You never sleep? Kale turned his head slightly. His answer was quiet. Not anymore. Not the way I used to. She looked into his eyes. They were not like other eyes, not entirely human, but not cold either. Mira asked him the question she had been holding since the moment they met. What did they do to you? Kale was quiet for a long time. Then he turned away and walked toward one of the far walls. There was a smooth surface there, black and polished like glass. He touched it with his palm. The wall lit up, showing flickering images, not video, not memories exactly, but fragments of something older. He spoke, his voice low and steady. I was 15 when they took me. The architects were still learning how to control human minds. They wanted soldiers, ones who wouldn't question, ones who could destroy without emotion. Mira stood beside him, watching shapes move across the screen. Blurry images of cities falling, of fire in the sky, of children running. They didn't just change my body. Kale said they tried to erase who I was, but it didn't work. Not fully. He placed his other hand on the glass, and for a moment, a young face appeared. His face, before the change, remembered music. He said, that's what saved me. A song my mother used to hum. He looked at Mira. That's why your lullaby reached me, because I remembered mine. Mira felt her throat tighten. You were just a boy. Kale nodded. We all were. The first wave of hybrid units. They called us echo frames, because we were built to repeat commands, to copy the voices of the ones we lost. But some of us, we learned to echo something else: memories, love, grief. We became more than weapons, so they hunted you. Turned off the display. The wall went dark. I ran, I hid, I wandered for years. But the memories stayed. He looked at her again. Not the memories they gave me, the ones they couldn't take. Mira walked to a nearby bench and sat down. She looked at the glowing pool, the soft ripples, the strange energy. Do you still feel human? She asked. Kale sat beside her. I feel pain. I feel regret. I remember my name. I think that counts. She nodded slowly. I think it does too. Kale leaned back, stared at the ceiling. We've lost so much, but maybe that's why we have to hold on to what's left. Your baby, he represents something new, something they can't control. Mira looked at the cradle. He's just a baby. Kale smiled faintly. And so were we once. There was a pause, a peaceful silence, not empty, but full of unspoken thoughts. Then Kale spoke again. There's more you need to know. He stood, walked over to a control panel. Pressed a series of symbols. A new chamber opened hidden behind the wall. Inside, Mira saw rows of devices. Floating lights, strange instruments. This is the core, Kale said, the heart of the shelter, and possibly the last original interface to the architect system. Mira walked in slowly. She could feel the energy in the air. Alive, watching. Kale pointed to a pedestal in the center. There was a small speaker on top, simple, silent. I want you to try something, he said. Speak to it. Sing anything that comes to your heart. Mira hesitated. But then she closed her eyes. She began to hum, not the lullaby, but something new, a melody that rose from inside her, soft, gentle, but strong. The room responded. The lights pulsed. The air changed. Kale watched in awe. This shouldn't be possible. No one has ever activated it before. Mira opened her eyes. The melody faded, and the room was glowing. She looked at Kale. What does it mean? He stepped forward, his voice filled with something rare. Wonder. It means you're not just a key. You're a transmitter. Mira blinked. Oh, what? Kale explained. Your voice doesn't just unlock, it sends. You carry the signal of an ancient command, something even the architects couldn't control. Mira felt dizzy, but she stood her ground. Why me? Why my child? Kale's voice lowered. Because your bloodline may be older than the fall, older than Earth as we know it. Your ancestors were the original voice programmers, the first to bond with the architect language, and you are the last. Mira sat down, her heart racing. Tears welled in her eyes, not from fear, but from something else, responsibility. Kale kneeled in front of her. We don't have much time. The machines are learning. They're adapting. If we want to stop them, we need to find the main node and shut it down from the inside. Only you can reach it. Only you can speak to it. Mira whispered. What if I fail? Kale looked at her with quiet strength. Then we fall with you, but if you succeed, you don't just save us. You save the voice of humanity. Mira looked at her baby, sleeping in the cradle of light. Then she looked at Kale. Her voice didn't shake. When do we leave? Mira stood before the gates of the chamber, the pulse of the core still humming behind her. Her heart beat fast, but her hands did not shake. She was no longer just a mother. She was something more now. Kale watched her quietly. He could see it, the change in her eyes, the strength in her voice. She stepped into the main hall of the shelter. Others had gathered, survivors, hybrids, refugees from broken places. Some barely clinging to life, some still unsure if they wanted to keep fighting. They all looked at her, not with doubt, but with hope. Kale raised his hand, his voice steady. The machines have located the outer shell of this shelter. Scouts were seen near the surface an hour ago. We estimate a full strike force by sunrise. The room fell silent. Only the hum of the crystals remained. Kale turned to Mira. It's time. She nodded. Where do we go? Kale gestured toward a rising platform. It led to a vertical tunnel carved deep through the old world above it. A tower once used to broadcast signals across continents, now forgotten, but not dead. You and I will reach the top. If the machine signal disruptors are still active, your voice will reach the main node, and then we shut them down. Mira stepped onto the lift. Her baby was wrapped in thick fabric and strapped close to her back, sleeping soundly, warm against her skin. Kale joined her. The platform began to rise. They ascended through layers of forgotten earth, through darkness, through dust, through time. No one spoke for many minutes. When they reached the top, the hatch opened with a slow grind. The wind greeted them with a cold scream. Snow blew across their faces. The sky was dark but alive. Lightning cracked behind distant clouds. Mira stepped onto the steel floor of the tower. It groaned under her feet. The structure had survived the fall, but it had not escaped time. Kale pointed toward the center, a circular device with jagged arms, still humming, still waiting. Mira walked forward, but before she could reach it, a sound split the sky, a sharp screech, metal grinding. Then a low mechanical growl. Kale spun around, his eyes scanning the dark. They are early. Shapes moved in the snow below. Fast, precise, dozens of them. Machines crawling across the field, climbing the tower. Kale turned to Mira. You keep moving. I'll hold them off. Mira reached for his arm. You can't do this alone. Kale looked at her. You have a child on your back. You carry the last chance we have. Go. Mira hesitated. then nodded. She ran toward the signal array behind her. Kale leapt down the staircase with fire in his eyes. His arms shifted, built-in weapons came alive. He charged into the snow mirror, reached the center of the platform. The array pulsed faintly, like it remembered the voices it once carried. She stood before it, took a deep breath, and began to sing. At first, the sound was quiet, soft, and unsure. But then it grew. Her voice reached into the cold, into the broken world. And something ancient stirred below. Kale fought like a storm. He moved between shadows, firing bursts of energy tearing through machine bodies. But they kept coming more and more. Mira kept singing. The tower lights blinked, then turned solid blue. Array opened, panels shifted. A beam of light shot into the clouds. A vibration spread through the ground. Every machine on the battlefield paused. For just a second, Kale looked up. She did it. But then a shriek pierced the air. A new shape rose from the trees. Larger than the others, taller than the tower itself. A command unit, black metal, red eyes. It moved fast. Too fast. Kale screamed into the "Come, Myra. You have to finish now." Myra pushed her voice harder. The melody changed. Not a lullaby. Not a cry for safety, but a call to end. A command wrapped in song. A code buried in every note. The signal reached out across the snow, across the sky, across the stars. Something answered. A tone returned. Low, powerful, and final. Kale fell to his knees as the machine froze before him, then collapsed all across the field. The machines stopped moving. Their eyes faded. Their bodies dropped into the snow. Mira stood at the edge of the tower, breathing hard, her song complete. The sky glowing above her. She turned back. Kale was still on the ground. She ran when she reached him. He was still breathing, barely. Blood spilled from his side. Metal torn wires exposed. Mira dropped beside him. Her baby stirred softly against her back. Kale looked up at her, a small smile on his lips. "You did it," he whispered. Mira touched his face. "You're going to be all right." He looked at the sky. "I felt the signal. Reach out. Something else is coming. Something old, but not like the architects." Mira held his hand. "Then we'll face it together." Kale's voice weakened. "Your voice had rebuilt something inside me, something I thought I lost." She leaned closer. "Don't leave me now." His eyes flickered, then closed. The sky rumbled again, not with thunder, but with something else, something moving. Mira looked up above the clouds. A new light appeared, not falling, but descending with purpose, and she knew the message had been heard. Snow whipped across the tower. The wind howled louder than before, but Mira barely noticed it now. She sat beside Kale, his body still, his breath shallow. Wires sparked faintly from his torn side. His face was pale but peaceful. Her baby cried softly. On her back, she rocked gently, her hand trembling as she brushed Kale's hair away from his face above her. The sky had changed. Where dark clouds once ruled, now a ring of golden light had opened, slow and wide, like the eye of something watching from the center. A shape began to descend, smooth, round, silent, not a machine of war, but something older, covered in silver plating, lights blinking in no pattern Mira had ever seen. She stood, her legs shaky, eyes fixed on the glowing vessel falling from the heavens. Kale stirred beside her, one eye opened, voice weak. "They heard you," he whispered. Mira looked down, tears on her cheeks. "You said no one was left out there. You said this was all we had." Kale smiled faintly. "I was wrong." The vessel reached the ground, landing softly. No explosion, no weapons, only silence. Then a soft tone filled the air, a single chime, not loud, but heavy with meaning. Myra stepped forward. She moved down the stairs of the tower. The snow crunched beneath her feet. Steam rose where the vessel had touched the earth. She kept walking, even when her legs wanted to stop. The baby was quiet now, eyes open, calm, as if he too understood something big had just happened. The vessel opened a doorway of light. From within, a figure stepped out. It was not human, not fully, but it was not machine either. Its form shimmered with energy, skin made of some kind of light, eyes like polished glass. Voice gentle and not spoken, but heard directly in her mind. "You are the one who sang." Mira nodded slowly. Still unsure, still afraid, but stronger than she had ever been. The figure bowed its head. "Your voice carried across the stars. It reached the core memory bank. It called the last guardians. Myra asked softly, "Who are youth?" Answer came in waves. "We are the echo makers." We were hidden, sleeping, until a voice pure enough woke us. "You woke us." Myra looked back at the tower, back at Kale. "He helped me. He saved us." The figure turned its eyes toward Kale, then slowly walked to him, kneeling beside his broken body. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the figure reached out, placed its hand gently on Kale's chest. A pulse of golden light spread across the ground. The snow melted in circles. The wind paused. Kale gasped. His eyes flew open. Color returned to his skin. The sparks from his wounds stopped. He sat up, breathing hard, then looked around. Myra ran to him, dropped to her knees, held his face between her hands. "You're alive. You're all right." Kale placed a hand over hers. I felt everything stop, and then I heard your voice again. The figure stood. "He is whole now, but not the same. He has been restored and awakened." Kale looked at his hands. He could feel it, energy running through him. Not cold, not artificial, but something ancient. The figure turned back to Myra. "You and your child carry the last human key, but now you carry more than that." Myra blinked more. The vessel opened again, this time revealing a long cylinder carved with symbols. It floated toward her slowly. "This is the Genesis beacon, the last seed of rebuilding." The figure continued. "Your voice activated it. Only those with true resonance can bond with it. It will carry your signal across planets, across time." Kale stood still, unsteady, but strong again. "Why now? Why return only now?" The echo maker replied, "Because the last war silenced all who could call us. The architects silenced the songs, buried the voices until she sang again." Myra reached out and touched the beacon. It pulsed beneath her fingers, like a heartbeat, like her own child breathing. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," said the figure, "you decide what future remains." Myra turned to Kale. His eyes locked on hers. "We rebuild," she said. "We protect the voices. We bring back the light." The figure nodded once, then slowly stepped backward into the vessel. Beacon floated higher, then released a beam of pure light into the clouds above. Satellites came alive. Long-dead systems blinked back to life. Old worlds felt the pulse. Hidden places opened. Shelters turned on, and the last sleeping colonies began to wake. Myra stood at the center of it all, a mother, a survivor, a signal. The baby stirred again, looked up at the sky, then smiled. Kale placed his arm around Myra's shoulders, his voice steady. "You didn't just shake the sky, you called it back to life." She looked up. A single tear rolled down her cheek. She was not alone anymore. She never had been. The light from the sky faded slowly, but it did not vanish like before. This time it left behind warmth and a message. Something had changed. Myra stood at the edge of the tower, her baby in her arms, Kale beside her, both watching the clouds part, revealing the first sunrise the earth had seen in many years. Golden rays stretched across the ruins. The snow began to melt, not fast but real. She stepped forward. Her boots pressed into soft earth, now revealed beneath the frost. A patch of green had broken through just one, a small leaf, but it was enough. Behind her, the others from the shelter began to climb the tower. One by one, they walked into the new day, eyes wide, hearts full. Myra looked at them. Survivors, children, hybrids, refugees. Each one had carried pain, but now they carried purpose. Kale turned to her, his voice steady. "The machines are no longer answering the command code. The main node is silent. They are dormant." Myra nodded, but her eyes stayed on the beacon, still floating above the land, still pulsing, sending out the signal. "How far will it reach?" she asked. Kale answered softly, "Far enough to wake the others, far enough to let them know Earth is alive again." She took a deep breath. The air smelled different, now clean, fresh, not perfect, but better. They began the walk back down the tower, back to the shelter. But it no longer felt like a place to hide. It felt like home. The days that followed moved like a dream. The frozen ground began to soften. The crystals from the underground chamber were brought to the surface, used to power new systems, new tools, new shelters. Myra worked beside Kale, helping distribute supplies, helping rebuild structures, helping teach the children how to plant seeds again. They found an old greenhouse buried beneath the snow. Still intact, still usable. They cleared it out together day by day until real food began to grow. Myra's baby laughed often now he had learned to sit to grab. To smile, his laughter was like music. It filled every room, every hallway, every heart won. Night Kale found Mira standing in the garden, looking up at the stars. He stepped beside her, quiet, but present. She didn't look at him, just whispered, "Do you ever wonder if it's really over?" Kale took a breath. The machines were built to evolve, and so are we, but now we're the ones writing the story. Myra turned to him. There was something in her eyes, not fear, not sorrow, but love. "You came back. You found us." Kale looked at her. "You gave me a reason to." He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. They stood there under the stars, holding each other, silent together. Weeks passed, then months. The first support ship arrived, carried by the signal Myra had activated. It brought tools, healers, engineers, others from distant colonies who had waited for word, waited for Earth to speak again. They came with hands ready to help, with stories of their own, with tears in their eyes when they saw green on Earth again. One of the crew approached Myra, a woman with silver hair and a soft smile. "We've heard the recordings," she said. "The signal your voice carried. It healed more than systems. It reminded us who we are." Myra simply smiled and said, "We are still learning, still rebuilding, but we are alive." Kale stood at the edge of the camp one evening, watching the stars. Myra walked to him. She placed her child in his arms. Kale held the boy gently, as if holding light itself. He looked into the child's eyes. "He will grow up in a world that remembers love, not war." Myra nodded. "Because we chose to believe in something better." Kale looked at her, his voice soft. "I was built to destroy, to obey, to carry out commands without question. But your voice, your song, it gave me a soul again." Myra rested her head against his shoulder. "We save each other. That's what humans do." The beacon continued to shine above the forest, no longer a weapon, now a symbol of peace, of memory, of a new beginning. One morning, children ran through the trees. Laughter echoed across the fields. Farms were growing, shelters were rising, music played through old speakers, reconnected to power. And in the center of it all, Myra stood with Kale, their child playing at their feet. She looked around at what had become of the forgotten world. "This," she whispered, "is what home feels like." Kale reached into his coat, pulled out the old communicator, now reprogrammed, reconnected. He activated it and began to speak to any survivors, to any colony still listening. "Earth is healing. You are welcome here. Bring your songs, bring your stories. Together we rise again." Message ended. A soft chime followed, then silence. But not the empty kind, the waiting kind, the hopeful kind. Myra took Kale's hand. The wind brushed gently against their faces, carrying the smell of soil, of clean water, of life. She looked at him and spoke with a voice that would echo in memory forever. "We lost the world once, but we never lost our voice. And now with love we build again." Kale smiled, and for the first time he truly felt it. Not just survival but peace, not just purpose but love. Boy giggled, the sun rose, and the earth at long last breathed again.